Vai, bicho danado, segura, segura! Ah, puxa, puxa! Não solta não, vem, vem! Chega cá, miserável! Ai, caramba! Sai! Sai da canoa, sai!
In February of 2010, a small village in the Brazilian Amazon was terrorized by a 13-foot, 800-pound black caiman that had killed a child. The authorities arrived, but the monster had vanished. The villagers knew it would kill again, so they turned to a method the outside world had never seen. Their secret was not a bigger gun or a faster boat. It was a trap designed not just to catch a killer, but to prove its guilt. This is the story of how one community's ancient knowledge and a thirst for justice led to the capture of a prehistoric predator, 20 feet of scaled armor, a skull as long as a man's torso, a jaw that can crush bone like chalk, 80 teeth, each one a polished dagger, designed not to chew, but to grip, to tear, to hold a struggling victim underwater until its lungs burst. This is the black caiman, Melanosuchus niger, the apex predator of the Amazon, a creature that has survived for 65 million years, a living dinosaur that can weigh over a ton and grow to the length of a small bus. It is a master of camouflage, a silent hunter that can stalk its prey for hours, its eyes and nostrils the only things visible above the water's surface. An attack is almost always fatal. There is no struggle. There is no escape. There is only the sudden, violent explosion of water, the crushing force of the jaws, and then the dark, silent depths. For the people who live along the rivers of the Amazon, the black caiman is a constant presence, a creature of myth and terror. It is a symbol of the raw, untamed power of the jungle. And in the small community of Triangulo, in the state of Rondônia, Brazil, that terror became a tragic reality on a hot Sunday afternoon in February of 2010. Triangulo is a small, remote community, a collection of wooden houses built on stilts along the banks of a small river, an igarapé that feeds into the larger Madeira River. It is a place where life is governed by the rhythms of the water, by the rise and fall of the floods, by the seasonal migrations of fish. It is a place where children learn to swim before they can walk, where the river is both a highway and a playground. On that Sunday, a group of children were playing in a flooded area of the igarapé, a shallow pool created by the seasonal rains. It was a scene that had played out 1,000 times before, the laughter of children, the splash of water, the warm afternoon sun. But on this day, the scene was shattered by a sudden, terrifying scream. An 11-year-old girl, Adriele de Oliveira, had been snatched from the water. One moment she was there, playing with her friends. The next, she was gone. A fisherman who was nearby heard the screams. He saw a massive black caiman, its jaws clamped around the girl's body, disappear beneath the surface of the water. The attack was so fast, so violent, that no one had time to react. The river, which moments before had been a place of joy, became a place of horror. The community was thrown into chaos. People came running from their houses, their faces a mixture of disbelief and terror. The police were called. The firefighters arrived. A search began. For hours they scoured the river, their boats cutting through the dark water, their spotlights probing the depths. But there was no sign of the girl, no sign of the caiman. The river had swallowed them both. As night fell, a sense of despair settled over the community. The search was about to be called off, but then a local resident, a man named João, who had been watching the river for hours, spotted something. A subtle movement in the water, a trail of bubbles rising to the surface. It was about 100 meters from where the attack had taken place. It was the caiman. It was still there. The police opened fire. The water erupted as bullets ripped through the surface. The Caiman, enraged, emerged from the depths, the girl's body still locked in its jaws. It was a monstrous sight, a vision from a nightmare. The police fired again and again. 7 shots from a 12-gauge rifle. The massive reptile convulsed, its body thrashing in the water. And then it was still. The community had its revenge. The killer was dead. But the story was far from over. The Caiman was a known man-eater. It had terrorized the community for years. But was this the right Caiman? Was this the one that had killed the girl? Or was it just another Caiman in the wrong place at the wrong time? The community needed more than just revenge. They needed justice. They needed proof. And so they turned to a man named Sebastian, an old fisherman, a man who knew the river, who knew the Caiman, who knew the old ways. Sebastian was a man in his late 70s, his skin weathered by decades of sun and rain, his hands calloused from a lifetime of pulling nets and paddling canoes. He had lived in Triangulo his whole life. He had seen the river in all its moods, its beauty and its fury. He had seen the Caiman, the Hakare Asu, as he called it, grow from a rare and elusive creature to a bold and dangerous predator. He knew their habits, their territories, their secrets, and he knew that killing one Caiman would not solve the problem. The river was full of them. Another one would soon take its place. He proposed a different solution, a solution that was not about revenge, but about justice, a solution that was not about killing, but about proving guilt. He proposed to build a trap. It was not a new idea. The people of the Amazon have been trapping Caiman for centuries. They have used baited hooks, snares, and nets. But Sebastian's trap was different. It was a trap designed not just to catch a Caiman, but to hold it, to contain it, to allow the community to see it, to identify it, to be sure that they had the right one. It was a trap that was both a cage and a courtroom. The idea was met with skepticism. The younger fishermen, the ones who had grown up with modern fishing techniques, with nylon nets and outboard motors, they scoffed at the old man's idea. A trap? To catch a 13-foot Caiman? It was madness. The Caiman was too big, too powerful. It would smash any trap to pieces. They wanted to hunt it, to kill it, to rid the river of the monster once and for all. But the elders of the community, the ones who remembered the old ways, they listened to Sebastian. They knew that he was a man of wisdom, a man who understood the river in a way that they had forgotten. They agreed to his plan. They would build the trap. The construction of the trap was a communal effort. It was a fusion of old and new, of traditional knowledge and modern materials. The frame of the trap was made from steel rebar, salvaged from an old construction site. It was a massive cage, 15 feet long, 8 feet wide, and 8 feet high. The bars were spaced just wide enough to allow a Caiman to see the bait, but not wide enough for it to escape. The door was a heavy steel grate, designed to slam shut with a powerful spring mechanism. But the real secret of the trap was not in its construction, but in its placement. Sebastian, using his intimate knowledge of the river, chose a spot just downstream from where the attack had taken place. It was a narrow channel, a natural bottleneck in the river, a place where the Caiman was known to hunt. He knew that the Caiman, a creature of habit, would eventually return to the scene of its crime. The trap was baited with a capybara, a large rodent that is a favorite food of the black Caiman. The capybara was placed in a smaller cage inside the main trap, a cage that would protect it from the Caiman, but would allow its scent to permeate the water. The trap was set. And then the waiting began. For 3 days, the community watched the trap. They took turns, standing guard on the riverbank, their eyes fixed on the steel cage that sat silently in the dark water. The river was quiet. The caiman did not appear. The skepticism of the younger fishermen grew. The old man's trap was a failure, they said, a waste of time and effort. They wanted to take their guns, their boats, their spotlights, and hunt the caiman down. But Sebastião was patient. He knew the caiman. He knew its cunning, its caution. He knew that it would not be rushed. He told the community to wait. The caiman would come. On the fourth night, it happened. The silence of the night was broken by a sudden, violent splash, a sound of immense power, of thrashing water, of metal striking metal. The trap had been sprung. The community erupted. People came running from their houses, their flashlights cutting through the darkness. They gathered on the riverbank, their hearts pounding with a mixture of fear and excitement. They could see the trap, the steel cage, shaking violently in the water. Inside, a massive dark form was thrashing, its powerful tail smashing against the bars, its huge jaws snapping at the steel. It was the caiman. They had it. The capture was a brutal, chaotic ballet of man and beast. The scene unfolded in a series of sharp cinematic cuts. The cage shakes. The water churns, a vortex of mud and fury. A massive head, as long as a man's arm, lunges at the bars. 80 teeth, each one a gleaming white dagger, scrape against the steel. A tail, a solid wall of muscle, slams against the side of the cage. The whole structure shudders. The men on the bank shout. They hold their ground. They are afraid, but they are determined. Another lunge. The caiman's jaws snap shut, inches from a fisherman's hand. A collective gasp from the crowd. The caiman roars, a deep guttural sound that seems to come from the very depths of the earth. It is the sound of a prehistoric rage, of a king who has been dethroned. For over an hour, the battle raged. The caiman, a creature of immense power, fought with a primal fury. It threw itself against the bars of the cage, its body a battering ram of muscle and bone. It twisted and turned, its powerful tail creating a whirlpool of churning water. It was a display of raw, untamed power, a force of nature that seemed unstoppable. But the trap held. The steel bars, welded together by the hands of the community, bent but did not break. The spring-loaded door, a simple but ingenious mechanism, remained firmly shut. The old man's trap, the one that the younger fisherman had scoffed at, was working. Slowly, the caiman began to tire. Its furious lunges became weaker, its thrashing less violent. The roars subsided into a low, guttural hiss. The king was exhausted. The battle was over. Now, the second phase of the plan began. The trap was not just a cage, it was a mobile cage. Using a system of ropes and pulleys, the community slowly, carefully, began to haul the massive trap out of the water. It was a monumental task. The trap, with the 800-pound caiman inside, weighed over a ton. Every man, woman, and child in the community pulled on the ropes. It was a testament to their unity, their shared purpose, their collective will. Inch by inch, they dragged the cage up the muddy bank until it was clear of the water. And then, for the first time, they saw it. The killer, the monster that had haunted their dreams. It was a massive black caiman, even bigger than they had imagined. Its skin was a dark, almost black, a patchwork of scars and algae. Its eyes, two cold reptilian slits, stared out at them with a mixture of hatred and fear. But it was the caiman's jaw that drew their attention. There, wedged between two of its massive teeth, was a small piece of blue fabric. It was a piece of a child's dress. It was the dress that Adriele had been wearing on the day she was killed. There was a collective gasp from the crowd. A wave of emotion, of grief, of anger, of relief washed over them. This was it. This was the proof. This was the killer. Justice had been served. But the story does not end there. The capture of the Caiman of Triangolo was a turning point for the community. It was a moment of empowerment, a moment when they realized that they did not have to live in fear. They had the knowledge, the skills, the unity to face the dangers of the jungle on their own terms. The trap, Sebastian's trap, became a symbol of this newfound empowerment. It was used again and again in the years that followed to capture and relocate other problem caimans, to manage the growing population of predators in the river. It became a tool of conservation, a way for the community to coexist with the dangerous creatures that shared their world. The story of the trap of Triangolo also became a legend in the region. It was a story of how a small, remote community, using a combination of traditional knowledge and modern ingenuity, had solved a problem that the authorities could not. It was a story that was told and retold, a story that inspired other communities to take control of their own destinies, to find their own solutions to the challenges of living in the Amazon. The legacy of Sebastião's trap is a powerful one. It is a story about the importance of community, of unity, of the collective will to overcome adversity. It is a story about the enduring value of traditional ecological knowledge, of the wisdom that is passed down through generations, the wisdom that is written in the land, in the water, in the hearts of the people who live there. And it is a story about justice, not the abstract, impersonal justice of the courts, but a more immediate, more visceral form of justice. The justice of a community that had been wronged, a community that had taken matters into its own hands, a community that had faced its demons and emerged victorious. The Black Caiman of Triangulo was a monster, a killer, a creature of nightmare. But in the end, it was no match for the courage, the ingenuity, and the unbreakable spirit of a small Amazonian village. The trap that they built was more than just a cage. It was a symbol of their resilience, their determination, their refusal to be victims. It was a testament to the enduring power of the human spirit and to the simple, profound truth that even in the darkest of jungles, there is always a way to find the light. The secret of the trap was not the steel or the springs or the bait. The secret was the community. The secret was the will of a people who refused to be afraid. Let's delve deeper into the brilliance of Sebastião's design. The trap was not just a feat of engineering, it was a masterpiece of animal psychology. Sebastião understood that the caiman was a creature of habit, but also a creature of immense pride, a predator that was used to being the king of its domain. The trap exploited this psychology with ruthless efficiency. The placement of the trap was the first stroke of genius. By setting it in the caiman's known hunting ground, Sebastião was not just waiting for the caiman to stumble upon it. He was challenging it. He was placing an obstacle in its path, an intrusion into its territory. He knew that the caiman, a territorial and aggressive animal, would not be able to resist investigating the strange, new object in its home. The use of a live capybara as bait was the second stroke of genius. A dead bait would have attracted the caiman, yes, but a live bait, a struggling, frightened animal, would do more than just attract it. It would enrage it. It would trigger the caiman's predatory instincts, its deep-seated drive to kill. The scent of the capybara, combined with the sounds of its distress, would be an irresistible lure. The caiman would not just be hungry, it would be angry, and an angry predator is a careless predator. The design of the cage itself was the third stroke of genius. The wide-spaced bars were a deliberate choice. They were a psychological torment. They allowed the caiman to see the bait clearly, to get close to it, to feel the frantic vibrations of its struggle in the water. They created the illusion of access, the tantalizing possibility of an easy meal, a reward for its patience. But it was a cruel illusion. The bars also created an impassable barrier, a sense of confinement, of being thwarted by an inanimate object. The caiman, the apex predator, would have been able to see its prey, to smell it, to almost taste the blood in the water, but it would not have been able to reach it. This mounting frustration, this insult to its power, would have fueled its rage, transforming its calculated predatory instinct into a blind, desperate fury, a single-minded determination to breach the cage and claim what it believed was rightfully its. And then there was the door, the heavy steel grate, held open by a simple trigger mechanism. The trigger was a pressure plate, a false bottom in the cage. When the caiman, in its rage and frustration, finally entered the cage, its massive weight would have depressed the plate, releasing the spring and slamming the door shut behind it. It was a simple, elegant, and brutally effective mechanism. It used the caiman's own weight, its own power, against it. The trap was a psychological weapon as much as a physical one. It was a trap that was designed to exploit the caiman's own nature, its own instincts, its own pride. It was a trap that was as much about understanding the mind of the animal as it was about containing its body. This deep, intuitive understanding of animal behavior is a hallmark of traditional ecological knowledge. It is a knowledge that is not learned from books, but from a lifetime of observation, of interaction, of living in close proximity to the natural world. It is a knowledge that is holistic, that sees the animal not as an isolated organism, but as a part of a complex web of relationships, of a dynamic and ever-changing ecosystem. The story of the trap of Triangulo is a powerful example of this knowledge in action. It is a story that challenges our modern Western notions of what it means to be a scientist, to be an engineer, to be an innovator. It shows that innovation is not just about new technologies, new materials, new gadgets. It is also about new ways of thinking, new ways of seeing, new ways of understanding the world. It is about the creative application of old knowledge to new problems. It is about the fusion of tradition and ingenuity, of wisdom and creativity. The legacy of the trap extends beyond the community of Triangulo. The story was widely reported in the Brazilian media, and it sparked a national conversation about human-wildlife conflict in the Amazon. It highlighted the growing problem of caiman attacks, a problem that had been largely ignored by the authorities. It forced the government to take the issue more seriously, to invest more resources in research, in conservation, in community-based management programs. Scientists began to study the trap of Triangulo, to analyze its design, to understand the principles behind its effectiveness. They recognized that it was a valuable tool, a model for a new approach to managing problem animals, an approach that was more humane, more effective, and more respectful of local knowledge than the traditional methods of hunting and killing. The trap of Triangulo has been adapted and replicated in other communities across the Amazon. It has been used to capture and relocate jaguars, anacondas, and other dangerous animals. It has become a symbol of a new paradigm in conservation, a paradigm that is based on the idea of coexistence, of finding ways for humans and wildlife to share the same space, to live together in a state of mutual respect and understanding. And what of Sebastião, the old fisherman who designed the trap? He became a local hero, a celebrity, a man who was sought out by journalists, by scientists, by government officials. He was a humble man, a man who was not comfortable with the spotlight. He would always say that the trap was not his invention, that it was the invention of his ancestors, of the generations of fishermen who had lived and died on the river, who had passed down their knowledge from one generation to the next. He was just the keeper of that knowledge, the one who had remembered the old ways when everyone else had forgotten. Sebastião died in 2018 at the age of 85. He died in his home in Triangulo, surrounded by his family, his friends, his community. He died a man who had left a lasting legacy, a man who had made a difference, a man who had shown the world that even in the most remote corners of the Amazon, there is a wisdom, a creativity, a resilience that can inspire us all. The story of the Trap of Triangulo is a story that is full of lessons. It is a lesson about the power of community, the importance of tradition, the value of ingenuity. It is a lesson about the complex and often brutal relationship between humans and the natural world, but above all, it is a lesson about hope. It is a lesson that shows that even in the face of tragedy, even in the shadow of death, it is possible to find a way forward, to create something new, something better, something that can help us to live in a more just, a more sustainable, and a more harmonious way with the world around us. The Trap of Triangulo was more than just a trap. It was a promise of a better future, a future where humans and wildlife can coexist, not as enemies, but as partners in the great unfolding story of life on Earth. The story of the Triangulo Trap is also a story about the changing dynamics of the Amazon. For centuries, the black caiman was hunted to the brink of extinction for its valuable hide. By the 1970s, the species was on the verge of disappearing from many parts of its range. But thanks to conservation efforts, including a ban on commercial hunting, the black caiman has made a remarkable comeback. In many areas, its population has rebounded to the point where it is once again a common sight. But this conservation success has created a new set of challenges. As the caiman population has grown, so has the potential for conflict with humans. The Amazon is not a pristine wilderness. It is a human landscape, a place where people live, work, and raise their families. And as the human population has grown, and as settlements have expanded into areas that were once wild, the chances of encountering a large predator like the black caiman have increased. The attack in Triangulo was a tragic example of this growing conflict. It was a reminder that the conservation of large predators is not just a biological issue, but a social and economic one as well. It is not enough to simply protect these animals. We must also find ways to help people live with them, to minimize the risks, to manage the conflicts, to ensure that both humans and wildlife can thrive. This is where community-based conservation comes in. The story of the Trap of Triangulo is a powerful example of this approach in action. The community did not wait for the government to solve their problem. They took matters into their own hands. They used their own knowledge, their own resources, their own ingenuity, to develop a solution that was tailored to their specific needs and circumstances. This is the essence of community-based conservation. It is about empowering local communities to become active participants in the management of their own resources, to become stewards of their own environment. The Trap of Triangulo was not just a tool for catching caimans, it was a tool for building community. The construction of the trap, the capture of the caiman, the hauling of the cage from the river, these were all collective efforts that brought the community together, that forged a sense of shared purpose, of collective identity. In a world where communities are increasingly fragmented, where people are more and more disconnected from each other and from the natural world, The story of the trap of Triangulo is a powerful reminder of the importance of community, of the strength that comes from working together, of the simple, profound truth that we are stronger together than we are apart. And what of the caiman itself? The animal that was captured in the trap was a large, old male, a veteran of countless battles, a survivor from a bygone era. It was a creature that had seen the Amazon change, that had witnessed the destruction of its habitat, the decline of its prey, the rise of a new and dangerous predator: humans. Its attack on the girl was not an act of malice. It was an act of desperation, of a predator that was struggling to survive in a world that was no longer its own. In the end, the story of the trap of Triangulo is a story about the complex and often tragic relationship between humans and the natural world. It is a story that is full of contradictions, of violence and compassion, of revenge and justice, of fear and hope. It is a story that does not offer any easy answers, but it is a story that forces us to confront difficult questions, to think about our place in the world, to consider our responsibilities to each other and to the creatures that share our planet. The trap of Triangulo is more than just a clever device. It is a symbol of a new way of thinking about conservation, a way that is based on respect, on partnership, on the recognition that the future of the Amazon and of our planet depends on our ability to find ways to live in harmony with nature. It is a symbol of the enduring power of the human spirit and of the simple, profound truth that even in the darkest of times there is always a way to find the light. The secret of the trap was not the steel or the springs or the bait. The secret was the community. The secret was the will of a people who refused to be afraid. Let's explore the aftermath of this event. The capture of the caiman did not bring Adriele back. The grief of her family, of the community, was a wound that would never fully heal. But it did bring a sense of closure, a sense of justice. The community had faced its demon, and they had won. They had proven to themselves and to the world that they were not helpless victims. They were survivors. They were warriors. They were a community that had found its strength in the face of tragedy. The story of the trap of Triangulo has become a part of the folklore of the region. It is a story that is told to children, a story that is sung in songs, a story that is painted on the walls of houses. It is a story that has become a part of the identity of the community, a source of pride, a symbol of their resilience. And the trap itself? It still sits on the riverbank in Triangulo, a monument to the events of that fateful week in February of 2010. It is rusted now, covered in vines, a silent sentinel that stands guard over the river. It is a reminder of the day that a small Amazonian village, armed with nothing more than their courage, their ingenuity, and their unbreakable spirit, caught a killer, and in doing so, caught the attention of the world. It is a reminder that even the most humble of communities can achieve great things when they work together. And it is a reminder that the most powerful traps are not made of steel, but of the human heart. The story of the trap of Triangulo is a story that will be told for generations to come. It is a story that will continue to inspire, to provoke, to challenge us to think about our relationship with the natural world. And it is a story that will forever be a testament to the simple, profound truth that even in the darkest of jungles, there is always a way to find the light. The legacy of this event also sparked a new wave of scientific interest in the black caiman. Researchers who had previously focused on the species' biology and ecology began to study its behavior, its intelligence, its capacity for learning. They wanted to understand how an animal that was so powerful, so cunning, so perfectly adapted to its environment could be outsmarted by a simple trap. What they discovered was that the black caiman, like many large predators, is a creature of habit. It establishes a territory, a home range, and it patrols that territory on a regular basis. It learns the patterns of the river, the movements of its prey, the locations of the best hunting spots. It is a creature of routine. And it was this routine, this predictability, that Sebastião had exploited. He knew that the caiman would eventually return to the scene of its crime. He knew that it would follow the same paths, the same channels, the same currents. He had used the caiman's own nature, its own instincts, against it. But the researchers also discovered something else. They discovered that the black caiman is a surprisingly intelligent animal. It is capable of learning, of adapting, of solving problems. They found that caimans that had been captured and released were much more difficult to capture a second time. They had learned to avoid traps, to be wary of boats, to be suspicious of strange objects in their environment. They were not just mindless killing machines, they were intelligent, adaptable creatures that were capable of learning from their experiences. This discovery has had important implications for the management of black caimans. It has shown that simply removing problem animals is not a long-term solution. Other caimans will soon move in to take their place, and if those caimans learn to avoid traps, they will become even more difficult to manage. The key, the researchers concluded, is not to remove the caimans, but to change their behavior, to teach them to be wary of humans, to associate humans with danger, to stay away from areas where people live and work. This is a much more complex and challenging task than simply setting a trap. It requires a deep understanding of caiman behavior, a long-term commitment to monitoring and management, and a close partnership with local communities. It is a task that is still in its early stages, but it is a task that is essential if we are to ensure the long-term survival of the black caiman and the safety of the people who share its world. The story of the trap of Triangulo is a story that is constantly evolving, a story that is still being written. It is a story that is being written in the scientific journals, in the policy documents, in the community meetings, in the classrooms. It is a story that is being written in the lives of the people of Triangulo and in the lives of the caimans that still swim in their river. It is a story that is a testament to the enduring power of the human spirit and to the simple, profound truth that even in the darkest of jungles there is always a way to find the light. The story of the Triangulo trap has also had a profound impact on the field of conservation technology. The simple, elegant design of the trap has inspired a new generation of researchers and engineers to develop more humane and effective methods for capturing and managing large, dangerous animals. They are experimenting with new materials, new designs, new technologies, but the basic principles remain the same: to use the animal's own psychology, its own behavior, its own instincts against it. One of the most promising new technologies is the use of smart traps, traps that are equipped with sensors, cameras, and GPS trackers. These traps can monitor the animal's behavior in real time, providing valuable data on its movements, its activity patterns, its response to different baits and lures. They can also be triggered remotely, allowing researchers to capture the animal at the precise moment when it is in the optimal position, minimizing the risk of injury to both the animal and the researchers. Another promising technology is the use of non-lethal deterrents, devices that are designed to scare animals away from human settlements without harming them. These devices can use a variety of stimuli, including loud noises, bright lights, and unpleasant smells, to create a virtual fence that animals are reluctant to cross. The goal is to create a landscape of fear, a landscape where animals learn to associate humans with danger and to keep their distance. These technologies are still in their early stages of development, but they have the potential to revolutionize the way we manage human-wildlife conflict. They offer the possibility of a future where we can coexist with large predators, not by killing them, but by outsmarting them. A future where we can use our intelligence, our creativity, our technology, to create a world where both humans and wildlife can thrive. But technology alone is not enough. The story of the Trap of Triangulo is a powerful reminder that the most important tool for conservation is not a new gadget, but a new way of thinking. A way of thinking that is based on respect, on empathy, on the recognition that we are not the masters of the natural world, but a part of it. A way of thinking that recognizes the value of traditional ecological knowledge, the wisdom of indigenous communities, the importance of working together to solve our common problems. The Trap of Triangulo was more than just a trap. It was a symbol. It was a symbol of a community that had found its strength in the face of tragedy. It was a symbol of the power of traditional knowledge, of the ingenuity of the human spirit. And it was a symbol of a new hope for the Amazon, a hope for a future where humans and wildlife can coexist in a state of mutual respect and understanding. The story of the Trap of Triangulo is a story that will be told for generations to come. It is a story that will continue to inspire, to provoke, to challenge us to think about our relationship with the natural world. And it is a story that will forever be a testament to the simple, profound truth that even in the darkest of jungles, there is always a way to find the light. In the years since the capture of the Caiman, the community of Triangulo has become a model for other communities in the region. They have established a community-based monitoring program where local residents are trained to track the Caiman population, to record their observations, to report any signs of conflict. They have also developed a set of rules for living with caimans, rules that are based on their traditional knowledge and their recent experience. These rules include things like not swimming in the river at dawn or dusk, not disposing of fish guts in the water, and keeping a safe distance from caimans and their nests. These simple, common-sense rules have made a big difference. There have been no more Caiman attacks in Triangulo since 2010. The community has learned to live with the caimans, to respect them, to give them their space. They have found a way to coexist. The story of Triangulo has also had an impact on the wider world. It has been featured in documentaries, in books, in museum exhibits. It has been used as a case study in university courses on conservation, on anthropology, on engineering. It has become a part of the global conversation about human-wildlife conflict, a conversation that is becoming more and more urgent as the human population continues to grow and as we continue to encroach on the habitats of wild animals. The story of the Trap of Triangulo is a story that is full of lessons. It is a lesson about the power of community, the importance of tradition, the value of ingenuity. It is a lesson about the complex and often brutal relationship between humans and the natural world. But above all, it is a lesson about hope. It is a lesson that shows that even in the face of tragedy, even in the shadow of death, it is possible to find a way forward, to create something new, something better, something that can help us to live in a more just, a more sustainable, and a more harmonious way with the world around us. The Trap of Triangulo was more than just a trap. It was a promise of a better future, a future where humans and wildlife can coexist, not as enemies, but as partners in the great unfolding story of life on Earth.